There's humility and there's defiance. There's chagrin, but also chip on the shoulder.
Yeah.
It's hard to balance it all.
It is.
Because
Oof.
It is a slap in the face, and it does add fuel to the fire. It does. But when you turn around and say right after that, we know this shouldn't have happened, how are you going to direct this anger? How are you going to harness this thing? And there have been players over the years. Tom Brady, best example. Now, he lasted until pick number 199. He used that as the ultimate motivation. Amon-Ra St. Brown, he can still name all the receivers taken in front of him. I remember when Michael Thomas became a star for the Saints, and he ultimately had an incredible season in 2019 before he had the ankle injury that derailed his career the next year. He was motivated by the fact that he wasn't a first-round pick. So there is a way to take this and turn it into something positive.
Right.
To remove this sense of entitlement or whatever it is that prompted teams to kind of gather together and Red Rover their way into this collective mindset that Shedeur Sanders shouldn't be a first-rounder. You said it yourself. Plenty of guys who aren't as good as Shedeur Sanders were first-round quarterbacks.
Right.
Maybe the NFL has learned. I don't know.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about Jackson Dart, a lot of the stuff you're saying is similar to Shedeur. There isn't any one thing he does that you say, wow.
Right. I think it comes down to where Jackson Dart, I think there's just more film of him going, whoa, he's running the offense, he's going through reads, he's playing a little bit more like you need to play in the NFL. And those
because he had blockers.
Well, there's definitely that, Mike, and I'm with you. I mean, again, don't assault me. I'm still going to say I like Shedeur Sanders over Jackson Dart.
Right. I'm using your point.
Yeah, got you.
You've said all along this guy's good enough to be taken in round one.
Right. Part of the issue. But I think that's where the NFL is looking at it and going, right? There's some of that. And then I think some of the decision-making sometime a little too conservative, or let's just get a completion. And you go, wait, you didn't really sit in the pocket and read it out. Now, some of that could be because of the pass protection too. But also the taking of sacks and some of that as well, I think the league looked at that a bunch too and went, damn, a lot of this is on him too. And that's where that I think scared people as well. The sacks, why aren't you throwing the ball away? Are you doing that? And then, of course, as we've said all along, there's no great elite talent, I think, with any of these guys not named Cam Ward. So I think all of that hit, let alone who know. Again, it is another side.
I think the Deion factor is real. I think the Deion factor is real.
There's that, and there's that factor, and the simple fact. And I told you this, and I said this 5 or 6 weeks ago, right? That this could happen. What we're talking about. I know I came on here on a Monday and I said, we're 4 or 5 weeks out. The story is going to be Shedeur Sanders. Because not only from what I thought in my evaluations, but I just could tell from people I talking to in the NFL that nobody was like, wow, I love him. And really not saying that about any of the guys. But because we have so many unqualified people in the world making qualifying statements right now, especially in sports media, everybody's been fed for a year and a half is Shedeur Sanders, number 1 pick, Shedeur Sanders, number 2 pick, Shedeur Sanders, top 3 pick. That's what it is. That's what it is. And there's people making those comments on TV where I'm going to go, you don't know your ass from your elbow about a quarterback. And you're part of the problem of why Shedeur Sanders is sad right now, because you built him up to a spot to where he shouldn't have been quite built up to. And now there's a downfall here a little bit, and I feel bad for Shedeur Sanders. I do. I know some of it, like you said, he brought it upon himself, but damn, that's still a tough spot he was in last night, and he handled it as well as he could have.
I assume you weren't assaulting me, similar to me not assaulting you earlier when you were saying that.
Yeah, no, I was not.
I'm just looking which way the wind's blowing, and I'm trying to keep up with it.
Right.
And there was this sense that this guy's going to be taken high in the draft, and it lingered, and his dad ultimately, I think, was a factor. Right or wrong, if his name is Shedeur anything but Sanders, if his dad is anyone but Deion, does he get picked last night? There's a slightly tweaked alternate universe out there where maybe he does get picked last night. I don't know. I just feel like that was part of it. And we've gone through this analysis with other players, the good and the distraction.
Yeah.
How good does the good have to be to get you to say, we'll take the distraction?
Well, yeah,
right?
That's right.
Hall of Famer,
right?
We'll deal with a lot of stuff. The more that that comes down and down, the less likely a team is to deal with the other stuff. And so I think it's as simple as Shedeur isn't talented enough objectively to get the small handful of teams looking for quarterbacks.
That's the other
side of it too.
Right.
There weren't that many spots where he's going to land.
Exactly.
So we don't know how close the Steelers were to taking him. We don't know how close the Saints were to taking him. We don't know how close the Browns were to maybe trading down again from 5 and coming to rest at some point, mid to late round, and taking him there. We don't know.
No.
We don't know. And we'll find out tonight. Tonight is the real litmus test.
Definitely.
If he makes it through round 2, we got a problem.
Right.
But
yeah.
he could be the first guy taken. It could be the Browns sprinting to the podium tonight with Shedeur Sanders. They got announced today. We want Shedeur Sanders. They can't get jumped.
No.
So we'll find out tonight.
It could be, leave this up here for a second. It could be the Browns at 33. It could be the Browns at 36. It could be the Saints at 40. I think those are all like your realistic options here that you look at as far as the top.
Could be the Rams at 46.
Could be that later on down there too. And again, I will not be shocked.
Seahawks are in there twice.
Would not be shocked if he's sitting there at that time. I will not. Yeah. For all the things we've mentioned. Again, I'm going to say Tyler Shough on a lot of teams' boards is above Shedeur Sanders. Tyler Shough on a lot of teams' boards is above Jackson Dart. So that's the other part of this as well. And then you have Jalen Milroe, where people are going to like that talent and what the potential is in the future, even though he's not going to contribute to the team right now. But here's another thing I want to bring up to you, Mike, because you're always on the forefront of this. We're big Deion fans. When we're on record. I mean, really, it's one of my favorite people in the history of sports is Deion Sanders. Okay, do I think some mistakes were maybe made along the way in this process? Yeah, I do. I do, and I think Deion and the fact that, yeah, he's such a big power player and a few of the things he said, do I think that necessarily maybe helps Shedeur? No, I don't, but it's hard. He's a father, he's a coach, so yeah, he says some things. Here's my one thing. Why didn't they get an agent? We talk about agents all the time. Here is a guy that needed somebody fighting for him behind the scenes, like an agent, like we've talked about with Lamar Jackson, who also slid to 32, to help bridge the gap to explain the player. And there is value in that. And that's, to me, a big area where they made a mistake. A great agent has great relationships with head coaches and GMs and owners. And then he can go, hey, I know you think he might be cocky, but he's not cocky. Let me just tell you this and this about him. And I've been around a lot of guys. And why don't you call this guy that we all know and you trust him too? He'll tell you about Shedeur Sanders, and he'll give you the same kind of things I'm telling you, that this is a good kid and all that. That, to me, is another area that I do believe the Sanders camp dropped the ball a little bit on this one.
Because this is the reality, and we made this point with Lamar Jackson multiple times. As you said, you have someone who is an advocate for the player and also somebody who becomes an attack dog against the others.
Right.
I heard from agents about anytime Shedeur said something or Deion said, like, guys representing other quarterbacks, you know, and I don't want to name names.
No, but they semi-hate on him. Like, hey, did you see what he said? Did you see what they said?
But that's what you do. Hey, look at this. You see this? You believe they're charging for this?
And it would have kept Deion from having to make comments. Deion could have stayed out of it more. That's just my 2 cents. I'm not saying I'm right. I know it's a tough one.
Well,
but
then
I don't agree with that.
The 2 cents is the key. It's the 2%. People don't want to pay the 2%, especially on the rookie contract, because the rookie contract is what it is.
Yeah,
but
it writes itself.
If the agent gets you drafted higher,
ain't worth it.
The agent pays for him or herself.
Right. If you were in the top 5 picks of the draft, you're getting a lot more than 3% compared to where you're getting in the first 10 picks of the second round. So that to me was
Travis Hunter had an agent.
Yeah.
Cam Ward did not. Well, I don't believe Cam Ward did, but he didn't need one. He's the number one guy.
That's right. You know, if you know right away, early on in the process, all of that, okay. And maybe that's what they thought too. Maybe they thought it was such a slam dunk, right? But that's the other thing that I was surprised by last night and all of that. Again, I know they're hoping for, but man, when people like me and then I think people like you are starting to go, wait, we're 48 hours, 72 hours from the draft, and I don't know if Shedeur Sanders is going to get drafted. You know, to still have the party and do all that, that's going to be looked at by the NFL too as a little bit crazy that way.
Well, he didn't accept the invitation to come to the draft. The stuff that was put out there, I feel like that. I don't know how, look, it's collective, deliberate. It's not like they had a meeting. It's just a feeling that emerges where we've had enough of this. This is our way to push back. We're just kind of sick of this. I mean, if you watch some of the other networks, it's Shedeur Sanders all the time. Mel Kiper acted like he was personally offended that Shedeur Sanders wasn't a top 5
There was a lot of people yesterday
let it
talking
go.
like that. I know I texted you at one point to go, hey, there's a segment right now on TV that I wish you would watch to explain
I went back and watched it.
Why people are scared to speak out on Shedeur and that, right? So there is that element. And I think that's also what happened here. I think because people were so scared to speak out, it all happened so rapidly. It was like, wait, he's going to be a top 3 pick. And to the general football guy who's not in the weeds like we are all the time, he's going, wait, he's just falling out of the sky, just out of nowhere like this? And it's like, no, he's been falling. It's been happening. This isn't news, but the public didn't really want to like take the news from people like me or other ones out there. They thought it was hating, and it's not hating. It's what we thought, what we were hearing around the NFL.
I'm glad you used that word, because I was stunned when I saw that Deion Sanders was going to be with us Super Bowl week, because I have been very blunt in my criticism of him as it relates to how he's dealt with the media in the past. Freezing out the local CBS reporter because somebody from CBSSports.com, which has no connection other than the 3 letters. They're not the same company, they're not the same group, they're not colleagues, and they're definitely not the same person. But he wouldn't answer questions at a press conference because he had a problem with somebody from CBSSports.com. And I was like, this is beneath you, Deion. And we were clear about that. And he said when we met with him at the Super Bowl, you know, you guys say what you believe and there's no hate there. And there isn't hate. We say what we believe because sometimes you got to hear something you don't want to hear.
That's right.
And one of the things I've picked up, and look, we're rooting for Deion. I want Deion in the NFL.
I
think he'd be successful, and he will make whichever team he goes to more interesting. And the more interesting the league is, the more that people want to read about it. I'll be very transparent with my motive. I'd rather have an interesting coach than a bowl of unflavored gelatin in charge of a team. But there is a sense, and I'm not going to name names, there are parallels to certain potential personality cults where people tiptoe on eggshells and they're afraid to say anything. In the building at Colorado, a lot of yes men and a lot of yes women and a lot of people afraid to say anything that Deion might not like. And that's a toxic environment that keeps you from hearing what you need to hear. We all need someone in our life who will tell us the thing that we would rather not hear. That keeps us from doing stupid shit. I'm not saying that Deion has. I know I've been saved from it by the one person who lives in this house who is willing to tell me when I'm potentially going to engage in some stupid shit.
Right.
She might, if she was standing here right now, say, why do you keep saying that word? So we all need that. We all need that, because if we don't, we potentially have no self-awareness and we're just kind of bumble through life doing dumb things.
Sure.
So, and I'm not saying Deion's dumb.
No.
And this isn't coming from a place of hate. And we've been on board with Shedeur all along. And I pushed back hard on that bullshit that NFL.com, that embarrassing anonymous, let's platform someone with an anonymous opinion. No, that was wrong. But I think that this personality cult that Deion has created, deliberately or otherwise, hurt Shedeur and contributed to him not being drafted last night.
I think that's part of it. I don't think there's any doubt about that, right? All the things that go into it, and we know how the NFL works and about distractions and not needing other people making comments and all that. So between, yes, the play, which is not quite up to what the public thinks it is on film, and then all that other stuff is why we sit here going, hey, where's he going to come off the board tonight? And are we guaranteed he's going to be the next guy off the board, right? That's going to be the other thing, too. Like, what are people going to do if Tyler Shuck ends up going first before him? That's going to add another, like, what the hell is going on? So we'll see what happens here. But that was certainly a big story of the night and a tough spot for Shedeur Sanders to kind of navigate.
Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.